golden.
We are writing at a time of not knowing where your next meal is coming from, not knowing if you will have dinner tonight, not knowing if you'll be able to pay for the roof over your head.
I non lupe kwikamalam.
Who would have thought that the creative sector, responsible for uniting us across race, class and space, would come to a sudden halt?
We kind of made jokes about this thing when it was still far, because it was really far. Until between February and March, when we saw dates starting to shift, there was way less people than it used to. But for someone who's used to a huge crowd and seeing the energy of people, you know when things shift.
Noza Sitchulwana is a beloved musician on the South African contemporary scene. With her roots in gospel and raised on township influences, she has broadened her range to include jazz, soul, blues and rock. In another country, she would have achieved fame and fortune. Here, although highly acclaimed, like most musicians in South Africa, she literally has to sing for her supper. Now, she can't even do that. But it's not the money she misses most.
I miss creating music with my fellow musicians. That's number one. The rehearsals, we give inputs to the music, we share, and the communication you have with the band, yourself, and the audience. There's not a cent that can ever fill up that void in our hearts at this moment.
The music industry clearly was the first industry as such to be very negatively affected by the lockdown, because before that already venues and things were closing down, gigs were being cancelled, communities were being affected by this. But our community as such was the first to go, and we believe that it's going to be the last industry as such to come back into our economy, and that is where our biggest fear is.
Living in the same dream.
Although a global celebrity in her own right, veteran South African singer Vicky Sampson points out that the majority of the sector relies on festivals and gigs and struggles to make ends meet.
The portion amongst us who have become hugely famous and hugely successful economically is microscopical when you compare us to the bulk of those who go through an entire lifetime without any success or economic recognition.
Extravaganzas like the Cape Town Jazz Festival and smaller festivals along the coast or winelands and concerts across the continent have been instrumental in keeping musicians afloat. But ultimately, it's the more informal gigs at pubs and restaurants that are the key to their survival.
Live gigs right through, mostly would be 3-4 times a week. It's the festivals that are booked months in advance. You already know by the next year what festivals or how many festivals you have.
And it's not just the musicians who have been locked out of their livelihoods and are facing catastrophe. The venues that have also been their lifeblood are also casualties of COVID-19 in desperate need of a lifeline, like Cape to Cuba in Kalk Bay. World-renowned not only for its views, dining fare, exotic decor and vibe, but for its passionate patronage of live music.
We've been here for 20 years, and our restaurant, Cape Tiki, was very successful over those years. This has now reduced our income to nothing. There's nothing happening yet. I feel very sorry for all the musicians and the bands that used to play here and at other venues as well. Their income, I know for a fact, has also gone down to nil.
And as with the rest of South Africa, COVID-19 has magnified the daily struggles musicians face in South Africa's vastly unequal socio-economic landscape.
The first week when lockdown kicked in and I never had anything to fall back on, I never had any money saved up. It became almost like grim. You know, I needed to kind of reach out, set my antennas out. What can I do? What can I do in the community for me to survive?
With no additional source of income, Ocean View-based musician John America has started a soup kitchen, not only for his struggling community, but for his own food security.
It's completely hand to mouth, you know, because it was a struggle even before COVID-19. Because live music, the gigs were a cash flow for musicians, selling their merchandise and playing, and they're like, that was their food for the week, you know, and it would carry on. And now there's actually nothing. Because I always believe something's going to happen.
Alison Geduld is a veteran music promoter. She runs the Camel Rock restaurant in the seaside hamlet of Scarborough.
Local music has been the soundtrack of my life, you know. I've always had a passion for music.
In addition to promoting gigs that attract locals and tourists, the Camel Rock restaurant hosts One Guitar, One Song, an annual benefit for some of South Africa's legendary musicians, many of whom have no safety net should they fall on tough times. Like Steve Newman, whose ill health and financial plight reached Geduld's ears. The result was a concert for Newman at the Camel Rock, supported by South Africa's top performers and fans alike.
That was actually one of the most beautiful times, to see that music lovers and the musicians, how they supported each other.
But those days are over for now. The owner of the Camel Rock has had to convert this live gig venue into a grocery store. The bar sells seeds and the stage is now a makeshift supplies depot.
He's had to turn Camel Rock into an essential shop just to survive, so that he can pay like his top chefs and pay his management and keep it going. And maybe if we get through this, then we can have live music again.
And it's not just the professional musicians who are suffering on every level. An entire generation of aspiring performers could be additional casualties.
Steve, where are you in the house? Ocean, where are you? Kylie, are you in the house?
Musicians Camilla Lombard and Donvino Prince are the founders of the Cape Music Institute, an academy for aspirant young musicians from disadvantaged communities.
In 2006, myself, Ezra Dalport, who's one of the greatest sound engineers in the country, and the late Gary Thomas, decided to establish a community college in order to cater to the needs, music educational needs of our people who can't afford to go and study music at your big tertiary institutions like University of Western Cape, Cape Town and Stellenbosch, you know, and provide an institution for them to be able to get qualifications and enter the marketplace as professional music practitioners.
Left-hand hat. Left-hand hat, bro.
Some of the Cape Music Institute students cut their performance teeth through the training and development workshops and performances that formed part of the annual Cape Town International Jazz Festival. Dubbed Africa's greatest gathering, it is now also a casualty of COVID-19, plunging the industry further into crisis.
All the other thousands of musicians out there are struggling and starving, you know, no electricity, no food, no relief. We, as musicians or creatives, this is our careers. This is our full-time work, our full-time jobs, and so we want to get recognized by our government as practitioners, full-time practitioners.
Worldwide, it showed us that musicians are recognized for a good time, for entertainment, but they're not recognized as working citizens. I want to be a working citizen. I want to be recognized as one. I want to be recognized as a business person because I am a self-employed business person. That is my music.
Hi, my name is Luni Mlonyeni. I am South African and I am stranded in Turkey. Bring us home.
Hi, my name is
Stranded in a foreign land during lockdown. After putting out a desperate plea on social media, these 29 South Africans flew home from Turkey on the 29th of May, assisted by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture and the Department of International Relations. But hundreds of thousands of musicians on home turf have been feeling stranded for years, working in an unregulated industry, unprotected by labour legislation. They are essentially freelancers. As such, they do not qualify for a minimum wage or unemployment insurance. And during lockdown, they feel locked out from access to relief.
Because it's lockdown, we can't get around, and internet, we can't go online, and so it's like there's obstacles. There is a way, but there's so many obstacles to get to that first point. And that's the hard part as an artist.
They are also begging their official custodian, the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, to honour the Constitution that demands protection for workers' rights. This would entail the department to acknowledge its role not only as a custodian, but as an employer.
Know that there's been some business people that have felt enough about the arts to group themselves in such a way and to try and garner funds to support the industry. But I would rather get back to those who are really, truly responsible from a constitutional point of view. That is the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and they have failed us.
I am Tumsa.
In 2018, veteran musician and producer Gabby LaRue teamed up with South Africa's foremost musicians to form the Trade Union for Musicians of South Africa, or TUMSA.
The best we could do was to position government as our de facto employers. And from that perspective, we then said, if that is so, what would a normal worker union do? You negotiate for a minimum wage.
TUMSA now has over 2,000 members. Endorsed by COSATU as creative workers, TUMSA is working with the Department of Labour to amend existing legislation. They have also sent two principal demands to the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture: a minimum wage and a reprieve from debt during and after the lockdown.
The first point being that it would be 3,500 rand, ever less per month during and after COVID-19. And then the second step being that we get a holiday, a bank holiday, like a payment holiday from the banks, from our lending institutions, and that this 3,500 rand would not be utilized to settle debt or to pay rent. It needs a mind shift, both within our public, as to how music and arts is perceived, that it is a business, that it's a viable contributor towards our economy and our GDP every year.
In fact, according to a recent survey done by the South African Cultural Observatory, the creative industries employs well over 1 million people. And until COVID-19, the South African music industry was on a growth curve, with live music expected to rise to 1.7 billion rand in 2021.
As musicians or creatives, this is our careers. This is our full-time work, our full-time jobs. And so we want to get recognized by our government as practitioners, full-time practitioners.
In a letter to Special Assignment, the department insists its role is not to recognize unions unless there is a direct relationship between employer and employee. This, despite the union's repeated requests to engage with the department.
as fast as
An early May briefing of the creative sector on a COVID relief fund included all the department-appointed sports and creative bodies, except for TUMSA.
How do you work that out as a department, you know, and you know, you need to be accountable as a department to the people of South Africa.
There's a very simple term for that, crony. Crony. There's a crony mentality that we saw in the previous dispensation as well.
The department regards the music industry as only a fraction of the performing arts, but other creative sectors have lambasted the department for incompetence and corruption, allegations it denies. Even the department's handling of its COVID-19 relief fund has been widely criticised. Initially, the department offered 150 million to the entire sector, but of the thousands of applications, only a few hundred were approved.
I think what happened, Hazel, is that original 150 million rand, to be honest, I don't think they realized the scope of the numbers which make up this creative sector.
We are doing everything to fast-track people getting a relief.
The department has since acknowledged the glitches and has increased the relief fund to 200 million with the aid of the provinces. It says it has approved relief to 1,520 applicants. Thousands of professional musicians have been left in the cold. One of the fortunate few to be approved was songstress Nozo Sichelwana.
It's not that they give you money that's going to cover your rent or cover your pending bills, or it's just 30% of what you were meant to get. And also for me to go through the paperwork that was sent from the arts and culture, I would have probably failed to fill up everything. It's about 6 pages of small little details. If you miss one, your application falls out.
But many South African artists can't even afford access to the internet, let alone wade through the paperwork. They are eligible for relief if they can provide contracts and proof of cancelled gigs. But apart from festivals or government projects, most musicians are hired for live performances without formal contracts and on a freelance basis.
Most needy of our musicians who never get a contract from a government or any big organization, the rank and file musician, those are the people who didn't get 1 cent. And that for us is the biggest injustice with this whole process.
The 25th of May was Africa Day. In celebration, a United Nations-inspired African anthem was launched globally online. The self-funded song was composed by R.J. Benjamin with original lyrics by Michael Lee. It was rearranged and produced by TUMSA's Gabby LaRue and Camillo Lombard, and it was appropriately called Kindness Contagion.
Kindness is not something that people snarl at. Kindness is something that's very short in supply most of the time, and particularly during a pandemic like this. It's kindness and the likes that will get us through this pandemic.
But TUMSA claims the attitude of the department is anything but kind.
We have not experienced any kindness on their part. In the 9 weeks that we've been trying to reach out to them and trying to, at least get some kindness out of them, there's been very little of that. In fact, we've got very little more than a cold shoulder.
The Department of Sports, Arts and Culture declined to be interviewed, but in a written response, it insists it aims to protect and empower all of the creative sector despite limited resources. But TUMSA is having none of it. it has launched a class action against the department and will also take its grievances to Parliament's Portfolio Committee. It insists that the department has a constitutional obligation to recognise TUMSA as a legitimate labour union and to engage with it on a minimum wage.
It will go to the High Court, definitely. It could even go as far as the Appeal Court. It could go to Constitution, because what is really happening here is that human rights are being violated in terms of there is money to relieve these people, to give them money for food and so on, but the money either hasn't been allocated or they have been discriminated against in that they have not been taken into account.
Meanwhile, countless musicians remain on the bones of their arts, struggling in the dark, trying to find alternative ways of earning an income. Instead of singing for their supper, some are streaming their songs on social media and promoting the live venues where they used to perform.
So I had to scramble to look for ways and software of what can help you stream. And then I realized simplicity is key, which is straight into the phone, and internet speed is everything.
TUMSA has also launched an online radio station, as have performers like Aaron Taiwabi, who streams daily from his home in Philippi, Cape Town.
We've been surviving now by just doing organizing a platform for artists who are really struggling to speak about their struggle on our radio station, which is Alu FM. It's an online radio station, that is, you can actually access it wherever you are in the whole entire world.
You've got to change your mindset into being into a cyber world, and your audience is actually with you, and in actual fact you can reach a wider audience.
For those who cannot even afford the data to stream live, they have resorted to more basic ways of earning their daily bread.
The bread's made by another musician, Ben, who's found a way to make a living. But Ben's one of the musicians that actually thought out of the box. You know, he's making bread and playing music.
Let me be honest with one thing. This period that we're in now taught me a lot. It taught me a lot in terms of you can be a full-time musician, but always have a backup.
It is clear the industry is in need of radical transformation.
How do we now form a better synergy with government and with business and with our sector to become a viable and credible labor industry?
As the COVID-19 restrictions ease, the streets are filling again and South Africans are returning to work and play. But the first sector to be locked down will be the last to be let in, and no one is sure of how or when the live music industry will recover.
We're seeing a very, very difficult time coming our way for the next 2 to 3 years, for that matter.
Cape to Cuba will be back as before in September, I hope.
I'm hoping, fingers crossed, you know, because it's been a highlight for a lot of musicians playing here.
Got to lift ourselves out of it and dig deep, because we are creatives, we are artists.
The time is going to come when our people are going to need us again. They're going to need to come and watch us perform and listen to us and come and watch us at our football matches and rugby matches again.
This is one thing I will tell you. When it comes back, it's going to come back 199 times better.
You're my